Perfect. So kind of pulling from your initial reactions to what we're struggling with, the four of us who created this presentation, we came up with a lot of those same instances. And so from there, we decided to create our agenda around the three common topics or the three common struggles that students might face when writing their essays. So first and foremost, prompts and brainstorming. So what do we even write about? We know the prompts, but it might be a little bit overwhelming for us. So learning how to navigate and reword those prompts in order to make it a little bit more approachable for us as we're writing our essays. Number two, content and structure. So how do we make our essay stand out amongst the rest of the other admissions essays that we'll be kind of going up against? And then third, we will be going into editing and workshopping. So once we have our content down on paper, how do we go about making our essay flow, and how do we ensure that the grammar and the editing and the word choices and everything are all up to par with a college level essay? Perfect. So number one, we will be getting into prompts and brainstorming. We'll be looking at some common transfer prompts as well as some brainstorming tips, and going to get into eventually how to start your essay, which I know I personally find is the hardest challenge for sure. So Jules will take it away to explain the common transfer prompts.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We know that these prompts don't necessarily apply to everyone, but we think it's a good idea to talk about and start practicing for this session. Let's talk about prompt A. So initially, prompt A is going to explain any extenuating circumstances or challenges you faced that could add value to your application. And this could be anything ranging from what you've experienced, have you outside of school. This could be anything that's just, going on in your life, and anything that you've worked on so far. B would be explaining unique aspects of your academic background or valued experience that may relate to your academic discipline. So whether or not you are currently enrolled, or if you have taken a few semesters off, your work experience should not be discredited. It is going to be just as valuable to your applications and to your essays, and you can kind of explain where and why you are where you are. And of course, C, you would describe your collegiate experiences thus far. How has this experience influenced what you plan to study and your decision to transfer? So at this point, you might want to talk a little bit about where you previously were, and what about that school, or what about that experience has led you to want to go to the school you are applying for. That's going to be important to not talk down upon where you came from, but kind of explain what about it has made you want to move to this new location. You want to sell it kind of as no matter what prompt it is, you want to talk about who I am and why do I want to go to this university. They're kind of asking basically the same thing. What will you add to this campus and or the community? So who are you? What will you be able to bring? And what will you bring to the community? So we're going to move on to a short video here. And in this video, it's going over 9 common mistakes made in essays, but we're only going to briefly talk about the first one. We'll listen to the first.
What's up, friends? College Essay Guy here. If we've never met before, I'm the author of College Essay Essentials, which is the #1 book on college essays, and I hope that's still true when you watch this video. Today I'm going to share with you 9 mistakes that I see students make in their essays all the time, and I promise not to scream at you the entire time. Hope you enjoy. Number 1, students oftentimes will choose a common topic, they'll make common connections, I'll explain that in a second, and they'll use common language. And that's a surefire way to blend in. What do I mean? A common topic, they'll write about basketball, common connections, how it's taught them hard work, discipline, and perseverance. And then they'll use common language like, teamwork really does make the dream work, or, that's how I realized the true meaning of leadership. Instead, choose an uncommon topic when possible, make uncommon connections, and use uncommon language. Let's say, for example, you don't even have an uncommon topic. You've got basketball to write with. Well, those uncommon connections are going to be all the more important. I want to learn how basketball has taught you the value of like healthy boundaries. Or I want to learn about how basketball has taught you the value of like democracy. Or better yet, when you shouldn't value democracy, when in fact you need to just take it to the rack, right? Take it to the hole. You don't need to actually listen. Anytime that you can, in those connections, sort of subvert conventional wisdom, that's going to help your paragraph stand out, and it's going to help your essay stand out. Just to recap, not common, uncommon topics, uncommon connections, uncommon language. Second mistake that I see students make.
Fantastic. So with that, we are going to press on to the next slide, but we will be sending out this video for you so that you may follow up and watch the rest of it at your discretion.
Perfect. Thanks, Jules. So kind of like what that video was just saying, he dove into the most common mistake that students make is that they will think that whatever they want to write about is super common, and sometimes maybe it is, but kind of how to defer from that is to take that uncommon topic or take that common topic and match it with an uncommon theme. So just keep in mind while you start your essay or even while you just start reading the prompts, these essays are an opportunity to get to know you. And with that, it's the type of person that you are and your strengths. So if you don't know exactly off the top of your head how to describe yourself, feel free to make a list and reflect and ask yourself those questions. How do I want to come across in my essay in order to make me stand out or in order to make my personality stand out? And then with that being said, we can go into number 2, which is write about what makes you, you. So feel free to utilize your own voice. If that's funny, if that's witty, if that's serious, the more personable you are within the word choices that you make, the more the admissions counselors will be able to get to know you in a more holistic way, just from the words that you're writing and the thoughts that you're putting down on paper. And number 3 to keep in mind is that you will bring something special to campus just because you are you. So feel free to reach back into your past and pull out unique examples which will show that. Next slide. And just a few more things to keep in mind. When you are writing about your response to a challenge, just beware that COVID-19 will become a common topic this year. So if that is already what you are planning to write your essay about, just keep in mind that you might be going up against some other essays that have a similar topic, or even just do some digging into the application that you're filling out to see if that university has a separate question this year dedicated to COVID-19 related challenges or responses to challenges. So that being said, it's not off limits, but you just want to be sure that the challenge and the response that you are going to be writing about will stand out. And the last thing to keep in mind is not to undersell yourself in your essay. You've gotten this far, so feel free to celebrate your small and your big wins. So for example, if you helped out your uncle in his office environment and you were essentially an administrative assistant, don't word that as, I just helped out my uncle. Word that as you were an administrative assistant. That's a huge accomplishment that you've made. And I think we tend to look at those accomplishments as just being very normal or very vague, but feel free to really sell that to admissions counselors because you've definitely grown and developed some soft and hard skills in doing so. Perfect. And just some inspiration for you while you get started. This is pulled from an article by Anne Lamott, and it's about first drafts. And she says, almost all good writing begins with terrible first efforts. You need to start somewhere. Start by getting something, anything, down on paper. A friend of mine says that the first draft is a down draft. You just get it down. The second draft is the updraft. You fix it up. You try to say what you have to say more accurately. And the third draft is the dental draft, where you check every tooth to see if it's loose or cramped or decayed or even, God help us, healthy. So what we really want to reiterate here is that no matter what you are getting down on paper first and foremost, that doesn't need to turn into your essay. You can create multiple drafts and multiple ideas until you press the submit button. You can really play with your word choice and play with the themes that you want to talk about until you find the right fit for you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rose. And now we're going to move into how to brainstorm. Let me see if I can click on this. So, point number 1 is to have a conversation about the prompt and write down everything you say. We want you to kind of start talking about what are your dreams, what kind of lessons you've gotten through, what type of person are you? Speaking your answer to the prompt out loud will generate ideas. From there, write that down. That's your essay. It's really going to be important to get everything down on paper. Point number 2 would be practicing positive self-reference to define your voice. This is going to be, who are you? What kind of person are you? Address the I am a blank person, or have your friends, family, peers, loved ones, teachers, etc. talk about who you are. How would they describe you? Sometimes it can be hard to think about who you are from an internal point of view, but getting other people's advice really definitely helps understand what you should be writing about. And then finally, think about life from a third person. What are the ups and downs? What themes make the story come full circle? And don't just write by yourself. Consider brainstorming as a group. You can help grab 3 other people, 3 other trusted people, friends, teachers, and discuss in a session. You might be working on the same topic. You might be working on similar topics or similar essays, and kind of giving your input about what you thought your friend experienced, or what your friends thought you exhibited, what kind of life lessons you exhibited during those situations, during those moments, can be helpful in putting that down on paper. Also keep in mind that when you're writing, you want to write as if you're talking to not just your friend, because sometimes we can be laxed in how we speak to our friends. But the language that you want to come across is, how would you tell someone that you like, your teacher that you enjoy working with, a peer or other professional, but don't go too formal. It's definitely important to get your voice across. Another quote that we'd like to utilize is also from the Shitty First Drafts essay by Anne Lamott. The first draft is going to be your child draft, where you want to let it all pour out, ramp all over the place, knowing that no one is going to see it and that you can just shape it later. Just get it all down on paper, because there may be something great in those 6 crazy pages that you would have never gotten to by more rational grown-up means. Essentially, again, we're just saying, write it down. You don't have to write down 6 pages, literally. It can be as long or as short as you need, but just putting down what you can, bouncing ideas will spark something. The point is to write what you've got, and eventually you'll get something that'll help you continue your writing. So now we're going to take a short coffee break. This is a great opportunity if you have any questions or comments so far that you'd like to share with us. Or just grab a coffee, stand up and stretch. I know we've been working on and looking at screens for a while today. So feel free to take this moment.
Sydney asks, has anyone busted out the Christmas movies yet? Not quite. I'm still still in the scary movie game for October.
You know, that's a good point. I think I'm still, I feel like I haven't even hit scary point of October. I've seen candy in the stores and Halloween buckets, but it hasn't felt like it's come around for me yet, but soon, soon.
Perfect. If there are no other questions, I think we're good to move on.
Fantastic.
Awesome. So from there, once we get past brainstorming, we're going to move into content and structure. So now that you know exactly what you want to write about, or you have themes and ideas in mind of what you can pull from your experience, how do we get that down on paper and how do we turn it into an essay? So we'll be giving you some content tips, story arc, and then as well as a synonym activity. So to start your essay, I know, again, I said this earlier, but I always just struggle with what words to use to get down on my paper. How do I start this? How do I just get these ideas out of my brain and somewhere else? So the first tip that we'll be giving you will be that thinking counts as writing. So feel free to get comfortable with your topic and really spend that time brainstorming before you get the words down on paper. I also know that the second I see the prompt, I want to start writing right away, but it's really important to get comfortable with it, rephrase it so that you're able to reflect and get your thoughts down before you start writing sentences and creating paragraphs and themes out of it. Number two would be we suggest don't start with your intro if you are struggling with starting in general. This can come together once you craft the body or the thesis of your essay. So for example, if you want to just start off with writing a bulleted list and from there branching that out into 3 main topics or 3 main themes that you want to come across in your paper, that's a good place to start, and then you can circle back around to create your hook at the very end. And the third tip, just get anything down on paper, even if you think it's terrible. So kind of pulling from the words of Anne Lamott as well. The words might not make sense. Wherever you're starting, it might not make sense, and you might think it's really bad, but at least you're starting and at least you're getting the words out there. So don't be so hard on yourself. You don't need to write at a 10 out of 10 right away. You can really build yourself up until you get to that point. And number 3, use your own voice. So don't fake what you think that the admissions counselors want to see. So it's really important when you are free writing, it can be as silly or as serious or as witty as you would like it to be. As long as you're staying true to yourself and you're getting your words down on paper, your voice will form on its own, and it will form with the content and the themes and the body in mind. Perfect. And then moving on, we will go into crafting the body of your essay. So number 1, will be to create a sound argument. So kind of pulling from what I was previously just saying in terms of making a list or making a bulleted list of your experiences or ideas you might want to write about. Once you have that in mind, feel free to craft that into a thesis statement of sorts, and to find the qualities that you're going to want to write your entire paper about. So some starting points to get this flowing for you might be to just fill in the blanks for these sentences. So I will contribute X to the campus, and I have done A, B, and C to prove it. So those A, B, and C examples can be examples that you have reflected on from your brainstorming. Or try out, I learned the value of X while on my path, and this school will support me going forward because of A and B reasons. So if you want to get across to the admissions counselors that you're a very dedicated student or you're a very hardworking student, choose one quality and then find the examples in your past that have kind of supported that quality to get you to this point. So again, these are just really good starting points in case you are struggling with how to structure the body of your essay. Number 2 would be, once you have these starting points, would be to show, don't tell. So those sentences can be very dry if you just say them verbatim in your paper. So what we suggest is that you find quality examples to ensure that you're able to show exactly what these qualities are instead of saying them just outright. So for example, I want this example or this paragraph to show that I am X, hardworking, passionate, funny, a good student, whatever it may be. As long as you find that example and you're able to elaborate on it and use very descriptive language, your idea will get across. instead of just saying, I am hardworking and here are X, Y, Z reasons. You'll be able to show it and it will create for a more enjoyable read for the admissions counselors. And number 3, kind of how to do this would be to tell it within a story. So don't just regurgitate your resume or the other qualities within your application. The admissions counselors will be able to review those as well. Feel free to utilize your essay to be as creative as possible. So be descriptive, write an anecdote. Feel free to take the time to look up like quality synonyms or to really adjust what you're saying into a more whimsical storytelling experience, because again, these admissions counselors are going to be reading tons and tons of essays and you really want to be sure that yours stands out. So with that being said, we will get into kind of how to tell your story, and Jules will be taking you through a story arc and a sample essay.
Thank you, Rose. So exactly, that is a great point. We are looking at your essays like stories. You should look at them like a story. How can you tell this story? And to tell a story, there are 6 main kind of points you want to hit. The first of which is the setup. Now, I'm going to be utilizing an example that we will provide to you. It is called Coffee Shops and Coffee. And we will not only provide you the link afterwards, but a few short snippets here. So the setup. The setup is who you are and what's your voice. How can you express right out the gate who you are? What about you is going to stand out? And a good example would be from this short story, from this short essay. Before I came to America, I drank rare tea with my father every morning in my bedroom, sitting cross-legged on the Jusho silk mat, beside a view of the lakeside reservoir. This really kind of expresses where the story's going and a little bit about their situation. The next point is going to be the inciting action. The inciting action is what sets off the events of your story. At this point, it's going to be what kind of takes you along, what's taking you along the way. And our example we'll use is, secretly, I'd made the decision that I wanted to be the one to discuss the news with him from my perspective. So I decided to study in America to learn more about the world. This is what's sending you off, what's sending you on this story, on this journey of your essay, of your story. Moving on to the rising action. The rising action is similar to what happens before the problem occurs. It doesn't specifically have to be a problem in a negative context. It's just what happens before the climax of your story. What happens before the main point you want to get across. Our example we use. I've also learned by watching leaders host meetings at the rectangle conference table at the back of the cafe. And I learn from the leaders of these meetings, watching as they hold the edge of their table and express their ideas. We're about to hit the important part, and this is how I've gotten there. This is how we got into this point. Moving on to the next slide of the story arc, we have the climax. The climax, like I said, is going to be the pivotal decision being made. The pivotal decision here in this story is when the author writes, straightening up my back and bracing my shoulders, I stood up behind the conference table and expressed my ideas passionately. At this point, after watching and after seeing all the people in her environment really showcase their leadership skills, standing up and being that leader, in this case, is the climax of the story. Your falling action is what happens as a result of these previous actions, kind of showcasing the coming to a close of your story. How have you learned? How have you grown? Last summer, I returned to Xiamen, China, and taught my father how to drink coffee. So this kind of ties it back to the beginning. Instead of drinking tea, the pu'er tea, we are now returning and drinking coffee with their father. And finally, your resolution. How have you grown? You know, what have you learned? This can be shown throughout the essay and throughout your story, but it really exemplifies at the end what have we experienced. And our author's example is, instead of simply listening, I shared my experience as a club president, a community leader, and a volunteer. I showed him my business plan and prototypes. So we've taken everything that we've learned, all of the experiences, and brought them all home, showcasing their skills as a leader. This really, again, ties back to the show, don't tell aspect of writing an essay. We're going to move on to a short activity. We're going to be utilizing Mentimeter once again, so feel free to head back, if you still have it open, head back to menti.com and type in the code 2813657. This will once again be in the chat. Thank you, Georgia. And we're going to have you follow up on how we could make this sentence better. Let's talk about synonyms a little bit. Our coffee, or rather our sentence, is, this coffee tastes good. Well, you're showing them that it tastes good, or you're telling them rather that it tastes good. But how can we turn that around, and how can we show that it tastes good? Let's jump over to our Menti and we'll move on to the next slide. Feel free to go ahead and paste your suggestions or type in your suggestions. So that first suggestion, I couldn't have done it without my coffee. You know, that really showcases that the coffee gives you strength, it gives you the energy to move forward with your task. You really utilize that coffee as a tool to succeed. Very good.
Yep. So then as you're kind of formulating your responses, definitely keep in mind, how can we show, not tell?
Mm-hmm.
This coffee tastes good. I took a sip and closed my eyes, taking in the experience, and I smiled. I love that.
That's fantastic. The next two, the hot Starbucks mocha was bittersweet, and the bitterness of the black coffee hit my tongue with a spark of energy to start my day. I like both of those. You've got a specific example, and examples in essays are great. It evokes imagery. So saying the Starbucks mocha was bittersweet, by saying that, you show this is what I'm drinking. I'm not just drinking this one generic thing. No, you know, and you might even evoke, hey, from the reader, I've had that before. I know exactly what they're talking about. The same could be said about the bitterness of black coffee.
Perfect. Let's see if we can get like 1 to 2 more before we move on. On this crisp fall morning, I held my mug in my hand and my coffee warmed me from head to toe. That's a really descriptive one. It's definitely very timely and it's making me want to get coffee right now and just hope that the leaves are falling in the background. Perfect. The coffee hit like a refreshing splash of water. I felt revitalized after drinking up. Again, the use of revitalize definitely means that the coffee tasted good, but it kind of takes it a step further and says that it almost like cured you, which again, really, really descriptive and definitely would stand out in an essay.
Thank you so much for all of y'all's input here. You can see it scrolling. That's kind of fun. And we've got a few more coming through. I'm going to hit enter to pause the scroll. Did it work? Are they not scrolling anymore? Fantastic. We'll look at the last few. My heart felt at peace with the liquid heaven in a cup. It really evokes the fact that you are enjoying this drink that you're having, this cup of coffee. Very good. Well, thank you all for your input. For the sake of time, we're going to jump back to the Mentimeter, or rather to the slideshow, and we will proceed. This was a great, y'all had amazing suggestions, some great ideas of how you can really change up just the words you're saying to bring in a lot more feeling.
Awesome. So in general, I think y'all hit the nail on the head in terms of content takeaways and really how to show, not tell. But just in case, here is just a running list of do's and don'ts that we've gone over. So in terms of content, do take the time to reflect on the prompt. Take all the time you need to just brainstorm, get your ideas down, get anything down on paper first and foremost, even if you might think it's bad. And then from there, you'll be able to work on a sound argument to craft your thesis and turn your essay into a story. And in doing so, kind of just pulling from the last example, it's definitely important to show, don't tell. So instead of saying, I've gained confidence, say, I braced my shoulders, I stood up, and I projected my voice. Gives a lot more feeling and emotion than just saying, I gained confidence from this experience. And in doing so, feel free to craft your own voice. So some don'ts, don't write your intro first. Let it come to you as you craft the body of your essay. Don't just copy your resume. And again, I think the most important aspect is to add that emotion to your story in order to make it more personal to you. You don't have to fake and write all these big, gargantuous words just because you think that's what the admissions counselors want to read. At the end of the day, they want a more wholesome view of you as an applicant. Perfect. And then from content, I believe our next, we'll be going into a coffee break. So I know that was kind of a long stint. So if anybody has any questions or anything they want to put in the chat, feel free to ask that now, or if you would just want to direct your eyes away from the screen or do a little bit of a stretch, then we'll get into our final piece of this webinar, which will be editing.
One small detail I would like to let y'all know is that the word cloud and the Mentimeter, or the question, will be provided afterwards as well. It will be sent out along with the additional information so that you can, go back and muse over the suggestions and ideas that may have sparked something. Again, everything down on paper is fantastic. So that will be sent out as well. I think about that statement. I see that statement, the dog stretching, and how can you not go, ooh, big stretch. And I'm just thinking now about the fact that I do, in fact, do this with my own dog. See her stretching, and I'm like, oh, aren't you enjoying that stretch? Or like, big yawn. Just, yeah, I agree. Good points. If there are no other comments.
While we finish up our, go ahead.
Oh.
Finish up your big stretches. We're good.
We're going to jump into editing and workshopping.
Perfect. Yep, so this will just be taking your brainstorming and your content to the next level and really making your words flow and stand out and ensure that that the admissions counselors are reading your words and that they are at that college level. So we'll be going into some ideas for group exercises, reading out loud, and finally asking for help. So just some tools you can use to ensure that you're taking your paper to the next level.
Fantastic, thank you. So when it comes to editing your essay, as we mentioned, we're going to talk about a few different steps, like reading out loud. Step one about reading out loud. Reading your paper out loud helps you notice errors and helps you really sound out the essay itself. Sometimes you might make a spelling error that you don't even notice, that your computer hasn't really called out to you. And reading out loud, you actually have to stop and think about what you're saying. It's easy to catch them. Checking for cliches. A good example here, avoid using cliches when writing your essay. A good cliche example would be the early bird gets the worm. You want to avoid using things like this because they are very common. They're known as cliches for a reason. So change up what you're saying and how you're saying it. This will help you stand out a bit more. And then of course, don't forget to ask for help. You know, you've been looking at this essay, at your essay for hours and hours and days. You might be on page 6 of your first draft and you just think it looks great. But asking for help, have your friends or professors, family read the essay for you. This allows you to get fresh eyes on it. They can give you advice or, you know, help you cut it down, pare it where it's needed. But keep in mind that just because someone gives you advice doesn't mean you have to take it. There might be something in your essay that you really enjoy, and they personally might not like it as much. It's advice, and you're allowed to take it at your discretion. But also, feel free to reach out to professors in the field that you think you are, or that you're going to apply for. You might not expect it, but sometimes they'll say yes, or they'll give you advice. They might not be able to look over the essay specifically, but they might be able to nudge you in the right direction or give you suggestions about what they might like to read if you were applying for their field. So, jumping into the proofreading section, here's a small checklist we have for you. Regarding your essay. Make sure you're answering the prompt and adhering to the word count. Like we said, 6 pages might be a little too much. I don't think most applications allow even that much. Make sure to be checking for correct punctuation and spelling. Your computer might not always notice that. And make sure you have an interesting introduction. Like we said, wait on the introduction till after you have kind of written the essay itself. That way you can flesh it out afterwards. Using both short and long sentences. This is really kind of an interesting one because we don't speak in monotone rhythms. If I spoke with 5 words in every sentence, that might sound the same. And it would be really annoying. It would be really hard to read. So mix up the length of your sentences. Once again, avoid cliches, show instead of telling, and go deep into a specific topic, not wide as to cover everything. Remember, this is not regurgitating your resume. This is kind of fleshing out a specific thing that you want to showcase.
Perfect. Jules definitely hit the nail on the head for a lot of those, but if you want to take that proofreading checklist to the next level, feel free to utilize this sample rubric that we've created to grade your own essay or even share it with your friends and trade and grade each other. It looks into your mechanics, language, vocabulary, and tone, as well as how well your essay showcases growth and change throughout. and you'll be able to grade it if it informs about you, if you're putting in your unique expressive language into it. And then finally, if this essay will speak to the admissions counselors as being college ready. So again, if you do trade this with your friend, feel free to take their feedback or don't take their feedback. Again, at the end of the day, if you're very passionate about what you write and you think it's a good idea and it's to your voice, then feel free to go ahead and utilize it within reason. Perfect. And then just some tips and tricks for y'all to take away after this presentation. A lot of times for transfer students, you've kind of been on this non-traditional path, and writing an essay and kind of getting back, or if you're changing your path by transferring universities, or if you're just getting back into school, these non-traditional paths have helped you develop soft skills. So feel free to take a step back and kind of ask yourself, how can I sell the time between high school graduation and now? What have I learned on this path that has kind of put me at this point where I am, and that has made me want to study what I want to study in this next step of my academic career? And then just another tip going from what Jules mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, if you do mention your previous university and it wasn't that good of a fit for you, try not to bash it. Try to look at it with the more positive aspects in mind. So what did you gain from that experience, even if it wasn't completely ideal for you? And then some tricks, identify the specific reasons about why you're leaving your current school for their destination. And what admissions counselors really want to see is exactly what you're going to get from that university that you can't get from other universities. So what has led you to this point? Utilize college level language, of course, and then in general, just ask for help. You can ask your coaches, you can ask your friends, you can ask your parents, anybody who you trust. Feel free to ask them, because more than likely they'll be wanting to advocate for you and they'll be wanting to help you out. So definitely, you're not alone in this. Essay writing is hard for everyone, so feel free to lean on those people and those resources that we've been able to provide you today. Awesome. And then we have one final coffee break before we get into the wrapping up of this presentation. So if anybody has any last minute questions or comments or concerns, feel free to utilize the chat or the Q&A feature now, or again, just feel free to stretch, big stretch.
But also remember, don't just drink coffee. You should drink some water too. Get some water in there. Mix it up. I know I haven't had a single cup of water today, but 2 cups of coffee. So mix it up. Get some water in there. It's good for your brain. It's good for your body. Caffeine, well, you know, caffeine is caffeine. But if there are no comments or questions, we will move on to our resources. So our first resource is of course, the college application essay article on our College Forward website. There are actually an amazing plethora of resources on the College Forward website for college applications and college life and post-college life. And just please feel free to utilize that as you go. The link has been dropped in the chat and will be provided as well afterwards. Here we have another important resource, the COFO Connect app. You can download this on your phone, smartphone, tablet, device, and it is compatible with iOS, Android, but it provides all sorts of resources as well at the touch of your fingertips right there in your hand. Excuse me, you can find these resources under the Resource tab, and you can click Getting into College and browse through loads of resources that include essay writing, tips, and a link to College Forward website resource pages. So once again, this can also be utilized to look at the rest of your progress as well, but the resources available here are numerous.
Perfect. And then just something that we definitely want to leave you with. The ultimate goal in writing your essays and applying to universities is really just to find the best fit university for you. So don't get wrapped up in trying to get accepted, and doing so you lose your authenticity along the way. Again, if you're kind of nervous about writing about something that's really personal to you, or you're kind of demeriting the things that you've gone through because you don't think they're worthy, they definitely are. And as long as you're staying true to yourself and you're getting that across in your essay, then the admissions counselors will be able to see that. And ultimately, you'll end up at the best fit university for you. So again, don't just try to write and get the words out and use all these big words, because at the end of the day, you're not really doing it yourself any favors. You're better off being you and utilizing your own voice in the process. Awesome. And then in conclusion, we've really enjoyed being able to create this content for y'all, and we thank you all for your participation throughout. And again, if you're ever struggling with your essays and essay writing in general, feel free to lean on your coaches, or even utilize our emails and email us your essays. We're definitely happy to read them through and help you out. But yes, thank you all very, very much. And if you have any questions or concerns or any last minute thoughts, feel free to put them in the chat, but we're definitely here to help you.
Yes, thank you all so much for being here, for participating. If you didn't catch our emails and whatnot from the previous slide, we will send that out in the follow-up as well. Feel free to also, again, reach out to your coaches. They'd love to hear and help and serve and read over your essays and help get you resources however possible. Yeah, I think I'll need another cup of coffee too.